Welcome back to the P.H.Y.S Podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Martin. Today's guest is Andy Mumford, a photographer, educator, filmmaker, and writer whose work has inspired photographers around the world to slow down, explore deeper, and connect with the landscapes they photograph. Originally from the UK and now based in Lisbon, Andy has built a career combining his love of travel, nature, and storytelling. His work has been featured in National Geographic, and he has partnered with brands like Fujifilm, DJI, Capture One, and Squarespace. In this conversation, we explore the role travel has played in shaping Andy's creative vision, what it means to build a life around photography, and why some of the most powerful images come from simply being present in the natural world. This is a conversation about curiosity, adventure, creativity, and the places that leave a lasting mark on our souls. This is a P.H.Y.S Podcast, and now let's get to the show.
I'm very blessed. I think that the YouTube platform has, for me, been a overwhelmingly positive experience in that it's opened up my work to people. And I find the vast majority of people super positive and friendly. And when I started with photography in the very beginning of my journey, I was posting on a site called DeviantArt. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't know that one.
It was a kind of Flickr 500px thing, but predated Facebook and Instagram and all the social media. But it was very art focused, and it had a really strong community. And you'd see someone's photo and you'd message and say, "Oh, that's really cool. How did you do it?" And everyone kind of was what's the word that I'm looking for? Just supportive and helpful. It was just a very good place to learn, and I learned everything through there. And some of the people that I work with now, and some people who've made a living out of photography, started on that platform when I met them there. So you build these partnerships and then move into into doing it professionally. And I think we've lost that. Social media, particularly things like Facebook and Instagram, they don't have that level of community or connection. You're encouraged to scroll and engage for a very short amount of time. One of the things that I like about YouTube is that it is a platform primarily that surrounds long form engagement. You're not engaging for a matter of seconds and then scrolling onto them. You're supposed to sit down and listen and pay attention. And I think that in itself is more conducive to creating community around work and discussions around work, much more so because of a deeper level of engagement. So it has been incredibly positive, but there are the occasional comments that just leave you scratching your head and wondering, I don't know what this person takes from photography because it's not something that I can really relate to. And I think the more, the more reach that you have, then obviously the more you're exposed to that. But it's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of a percentage. It's very, but it's, yeah, it's a very, people get into photography for a vast number of reasons. They come from all different sides, from people who are really interested in the technical aspect and they like the object and things like that. And then where I come in from, which is, I'm sure we'll talk about it in the podcast, which is basically from hiking. That was what I loved. Cameras were just something that came later. And people who love nature, or people who love, whatever genre of photography that you're doing, sport or going to gigs and concerts and things like that. And they come to photography through that. So everyone comes, I think, from a different path. I have a habit of starting sentences that I don't know how to finish, and then getting midway through the sentence and realizing I don't really know where this is going. So I'll just put that there.
Perfect. I get it. I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, where was I headed? And you're trying to do that. I mean, I've recorded 100 shows in the last 2 years, and I still will get I try to listen to everything the guest is saying, and then it gets confused with my own thoughts, and I'm like, uh-oh, how am I going to ask any kind of question? I'm too busy thinking about what they just said. So it's pretty straightforward. Like, you're going to introduce yourself, where you're from, and then we'll kind of break into how you started to find out photography was your creative outlet, and then where it's led. We can talk about your tours. And one of my friends is a huge fan. So your Namibia stuff, we were talking last night. He's like, it's incredible.
So
So
to come with literally what I've been doing today is it doing all the invites to the Namibia tours for 26 and 27. So
nice.
he needs to let me know and I will send him an invite.
That's it. I will let him know that tonight. We're actually going to be chatting here in the next couple hours. So he lives in Texas now, so we hop on Zoom. We try to do it once a week, just to
Hmm.
just to catch up and keep that connection. Makes my life easier from a few hour time difference, but it's like we're in the same place at least. So
So are you originally from the US or are
I'm
you were
originally
born?
from Oregon, so
Okay.
so I grew up on the Oregon, so down.
That is a beautiful bit of coastline along there. I saw a little bit of it a few years ago and it's just stunning.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do 3 months. I'm gonna go down to the Baja Peninsula, and then
Hmm.
slowly make my way up the coastline, all the way back into Vancouver, onto the ferry over to Vancouver Island, and then up into Tofino, which is our surfer paradise of where I live.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that's that's my plan at least. We'll see what happens because plans change.
Okay. So my name's Andy Mumford. I live in Portugal, in Lisbon. I've lived here for about 30 years, but I was born in the UK and grew up in the UK and left pretty much straight after graduating university. And yeah, so I'm still very, feel a strong connection to the country where I come from, to the UK. Obviously, my accent gives me away, but I am fundamentally, to all intents and purposes, now a Portuguese person.
Yeah, I would assume after 30 years,
Yes.
that's what happened. I'm the same. I'm 35 years in Canada now. Uh, I became a legal Canadian in 1992
Hmm.
at
But
18.
if there's an ice hockey game and the USA are playing Canada, where is your heart?
I turn the TV off and leave.
Okay.
No, I can't. My heart's with Canada. Unfortunately, I have to say it. I absolutely love it here. And I don't
Okay.
see myself ever moving back to the US.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. This is home now. I go back to the UK, and there's still a lot I like about the UK. I love the people there, and it is a beautiful country. But it takes about 2 days before I just realize I don't fit there anymore. It's a very different country from the one I left, and that is not in any way meant to be negative or denigrate the UK because I grew up there and it shaped who I am. And there are a lot of things that I love about the UK, things that kind of shaped me, from the music to the sense of humor to the books that I read, and just the way of the Englishness that you feel growing up there. But it doesn't feel like home anymore because I've been so long gone and so become so kind of used to and familiar with where I live now that I go back, and after about, because my mum still lives there, so I go back to visit my mum, and after a couple of days, I'm sort of like, yeah, it's time to go home."
I had that. I just went back home last October, and I was like, man, I could be here. I could live here. And then 2 days later, I'm like, I can't wait to go home. So, how did you find photography as your creative outlet?
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into it. I've always been someone who likes to be out in fields and forests and stuff like that. I've always enjoyed hiking from being a teenager. And when I was a kid, I used to go, we used to go camping with my parents and stuff like that. And we went to France and to Germany, and I just kind of fell in love with just being out, being outside in the outdoors. Um, and that's just something that's always been there. Photography it never really was. I had a camera when I was a kid, which I would just use to take photographs of stuff. But it was never really a creative outlet. Um, and what I would find is that I would go to places and that you feel this kind of I think when you love nature, you take something from it. You from being there, it's an incredibly enriching experience. Um, and I started to kind of, I bought a really crappy, was it a 4 or a 5 megapixel Sony point and shoot? This would be around about 2003, 2004, just when digital photography was becoming a thing. And just took a load of terrible photos with it. And I remember when I was a kid and we would do the family photos, and you'd have the roll of 24 or 36 on the Instamatic camera, and you'd have, oh, this one's come out well, and oh, this one hasn't come out at all. And those phrases kind of stuck. What does that mean? This one's come out well. This one hasn't come out. Why do things come out? It's like it was almost arbitrary. Felt arbitrary. Some things come out and some things don't. Um, and I'd look at my photos and they weren't coming out well. And I was like, what? Why are these? I'm taking photos of these places and they look rubbish. They don't look anything like what I felt when I was at the place. So I kind of, as I was speaking to you before, kind of fell into an online community called DeviantArt, and people were taking these amazing landscape images, and I'd never seen photography like that. I'd only ever seen bad photos that I'd taken. And I was just looking at what these people are doing, thinking, this is just amazing. I want to do this. I want to find out how to do this because this connects with what I'm seeing when I'm out hiking. So I just kind of dived into I didn't have I was a single, young single man, and that became like my obsession, was I was going to learn how to do this and just taught myself, asked questions, learned about filters and tripods and exposures and stuff like this. And it was an incredibly supportive community. So you just ask, you'd see something, you'd ask questions, and you'd get a response. And so I just taught myself and became a little bit obsessive in trying to make stuff that I liked, that I really felt connected, captured something of what I was feeling in these places. So that's kind of where the photography came from. And then you kind of start to have this idea of like, well, now I want to go there and take a photograph of that, which I think is very common in landscape photography. You see these images of Iceland or Norway, and you think, well, I want to go there because that looks amazing. And there's a point where, where before the hiking was the purpose, and then at some point it shifts over and the photography becomes the purpose. And I would say I'm probably at that stage and have been for a while where photography is more important to me than the hiking. Also, I'm quite a bit older now, so hiking's not as easy as it used to be. But that it becomes the reason to go there is for the photograph. And I still love that it takes me to amazing places that, you get up at stupid times in the morning and hike up the side of a mountain or whatever. That is an experience. And I think photography gives that extra motivation because if it's a bit cold or the weather's not particularly great, if you're just going from a hiking point of view, then you can think, well, there's no point. I'm not going to bother. But if you're going from a photography point of view, there's always that. You never know. Clouds can clear. You can just get that 30 seconds of magic, and it'll be worthwhile. So yeah, that's kind of where everything started.
And look where it's taking you now. I mean, you do workshops all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, I still pinch myself about this because I never expected to be able to do this for a living. I came to it. I mean, the story that I'm telling you, when I started picking up a photograph, I was already in my late 20s by then. So learning about photography was through my 30s, and I only really became properly professional, full-time professional in my 40s. I'd already had an entire career by then. I came to Portugal as an English teacher. That's what I used to do before. I was a teacher, um, and I kind of defined myself for a long way as a teacher. So who had photography as a hobby. So to be doing it full time um, is it is. It is incredible for me. I think it's such a gift, and I think I value it very much because I had like 20 years of doing something else before I did this. And I'd reached, I kind of enjoyed teaching at the beginning, but I'd reached a point where I really had fallen out of love with it. So to have a chance at a second career and it to be something that I'm so passionate about and enjoy so much is just I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm very lucky because I think I do get asked a lot about oh, how could go about making a living from photography? And I think there's just a huge amount of luck. I've had so much luck. It's not just, about being dedicated or having, being good at something. So many, I think it's so many, we often don't see the way that that doors are opening or closing for us and the way that opportunities are falling. And I've just been very lucky. I got into um, using Fuji back before when they were kind of less popular and no one was shooting landscapes with them. So I started doing the YouTube channel before that it was as there weren't as many people doing it. So just luck in many ways kind of has given me the platform that I have. Um, and yeah, I feel incredibly lucky because I get to travel in the workshops. One of the things that I love most about it is that you meet people who love the same thing, so you're traveling around wherever it is, whether it's Namibia or whether it's Utah or wherever, with a group of people and you've all got this thing in common and you're all there for the same reason and you've got this shared connection already that you love to go to places and take pictures and that's just been a blessing. It's the stories that you gain and the experience that you gain, the friendships and the people that I've met through doing it has just been a gift. So I'm very, very, very fortunate from that point of view. And I think one thing that I have to say, and I don't know, I think it's something that people probably should discuss more is things like imposter syndrome. I do struggle with imposter syndrome quite significantly. I think a lot of people do. I don't know how. I work with partners that I have who I work with. This is something that I know that people do get. It's like, wow, I don't deserve this. It's all going to fail. It's all going to fall apart. Um, and I think that's something that people. I think it's an interesting thing to talk about because I think people think that when you're doing something like photography for a living, you have all the answers and that and I don't. I am still regularly disappointed with my work and frustrated that things don't go well and always thinking I need to get better at this. I should, I need to learn and with that doing anything, I think there always there any attempt to do anything well, you have to accept that that's always going to live side by side with a large amount of disappointment. And it's that disappointment that will help you to get better. But you will always be living with it because if you ever stop living with that kind of level of failure, then either you have attained photographic perfection, which I don't believe is is the case, or you just not really being honest about because about your work and about your capacity to improve. So yeah, because I came to this late in life and I've done things before, I do feel that I've just been very, very fortunate. And regularly have people on workshops. I look at their work and it's like, you're better than me. It's like you're really, really good at this. But I think quite often people travel because it's that camaraderie. You get to travel with people that you like and that you get on with and that you share this thing.
Where's your favorite place? I mean, you've gone to some amazing, amazing locations. Where would be, if you had to pick a top, your favorite, this is where you're going this season, where would that be?
I really love Namibia. I think anyone who follows my work, that's kind of obvious. It's like my biggest portfolio is from there. And if you ever come on a workshop, you'll hear me at some point going, "Gosh, yeah, but Namibia is there's something about that place that I find very special." But I also love the U.S. Southwest is also an astonishing place. Those two places in particular. I think um, there's a sense of certain places have a sense of awe. They just fill you with this. They overwhelm you, if you like. They're overwhelming. And there are lots of pretty places, places where you can go where it's pretty and it's cute. Portugal has a lot of places like that, places like Tuscany, and you can create wonderful images there. But places that just kind of hit you around the head and like, with awe, like, wow. Those are the places that I get really excited about being in, where it's just because the feelings are so intense there. And then that for me is what drives the photography, is just this sense of wonder that will fuel the photography. It's much more than a place that's quite pretty, but there's a busy road behind it. And, I fiddle around here, I can make a composition. It's being in those places where it is all around you, bombarding you with this kind of state of uh, sublime. That's the word that I was looking for. The sublime. You're just overwhelmed by a place. So Namibia is this ancient. There's just an ancientness about it. You walk, you see these dunes moving down this valley that used to be a river tens of thousands of years ago, and these trees standing in this clay pan, which used to be a green field, and is just they've just been there for so long and become this eternal thing. Um, and it's just a riot of color. And I think that's one of the things that I like about the Southwest as well. You've just got these insane, vivid colors. And I quite like landscapes that are simple and austere, just clean lines, very, very, very minimalist. Those things appeal to me because you're taking these vast scenes and kind of reducing them down to their essence. And I think again, the Southwest and Namibia have that in common. Um, I love forests. I love being in forests, but I find them astonishingly hard to photograph because my mind likes to simplify things, and forests are very challenging things to simplify. I spent some time in the Pacific Northwest in Olympic National Park, and just spent 2 days just walking around thinking, I suck at photography. This is, I haven't taken, this place is amazing, but I can't take a single image. It is so hard. Yeah, and it just it took me a long while to kind of get my head around that, how to work with that.
I'm glad you brought up imposter syndrome. I mean, when I started, I'm very fresh to photography. I started in my 40s as trying to find a way to cope with things that I was dealing with and trying to find something that reignited my creative spark. I
Hmm.
had it growing up, and I became a dad very young, and I just focused on everything was family, giving them the home, making sure we had cars, food on the table, clothes on our backs, and I kind of
Hmm.
lost my direction. So my daughter had given me her old Nikon 3000, I think it was, and I started browsing YouTube trying to see what people did with cameras, and I saw long exposure water.
That's what pulled me in as well.
So I spent months trying to capture this image, and you get blackout on the old 3000 screen, so you have no
Hmm.
clue what it looks like. And you get one that's okay, and then all of a sudden you start to really push it, and then people start to comment on it, and they start to give you this, and you're just like, oh, I'm not that good. That guy's really good. Like, go look at him. And you don't want to accept that praise for the work you're doing. And everybody that I talk to seems to have that same thing. We all suffer from that imposter syndrome. We all suffer from that. I'll never be good enough, even
Well,
though
I think,
you're making a living from it.
but I think, but there's always this idol fall apart. Because the thing that I have that no one else has about me is that I understand, I'm aware of that chain that links back to when I was first picked up a camera and didn't have a clue what I was talking about. And I'm still the same person. I've developed skills, but I am still him. Whereas anyone, when you look at anyone from the outside, what you see is the result of their work. You see my website or the YouTube channel, which is, of course, it's collated and curated to show like my favorite shots. So you just see that side of someone, which gives this idea of well, this person knows what they're doing. Um, I mean, I would hope that I do know what I'm doing. I think, but I think anyone who's successful in anything, and I'm quite interested. I read biographies into people. I like sport. I grew up really enjoying rugby, which is a sport that we play in the. I don't think it's particularly popular in Canada or the US, but
You'd be surprised in Canada how popular rugby is.
okay, it's this is a photography podcast, so I won't talk about that. But it's a very interesting thing. There's a lot of people who've had very successful rugby careers who are very articulate in expressing um, how they strive for success and the effect that it had on them, and dealing with imposter syndrome. Operating at the highest level of the sport, but living in that constant fear of I'm going to fail. Because they had again that thread in themselves to remembering when they were learning something. And I think that whenever you try to do anything very well, if you're a person who has a degree of self-awareness about your own learning process, you're going to have that. I think it's an inevitable part. And I think doing anything is learning to live with that, because you can't banish it, you can't kill it, it's not going to go away. You have to learn to live with self-doubt, with with questioning yourself, with am I doing the right thing, with is this going to fail. And I think it's just coming to terms with that, and accepting that is going to be a partner with you on any journey that you make into doing something, particularly when it's something as intangible as a creative pursuit, because you're not doing something that's measurable and easy and easy to comprehend and define what the output is, what a successful output is. It's an intangible thing. What's good, what's working, what's successful, what's not successful. So I think you're always going to have that self-doubt and learning to live with that. But I think it's, as you get older, it is a little bit easier. Um, and because you reach a point in life where the consequences of failure are less, because you've got your mortgage, you're settled and things like that. So the consequences of everything falling apart are a lot less traumatic than they maybe were when I was younger. Um, yeah, I mean, even speaking to you now, I'm kind of aware I'm saying these things. I think I am rambling on. I should just stop.
No,
'Cause
it's great because my listener base, which we just hit, this has been one of my best months. I've had 10,000 full complete streams this month,
oh, congratulations.
which felt great. I got the little notification and I was so proud. I was like a proud dad, you know what I mean? It's been a lot of work. So I think what's nice is because the conversation is you. It's an authentic, we're just talking and we're sharing your story the way you share story.
Mhm.
And that makes it important. It's not, like you said, it's not a curated conversation. We're making a conversation about the things that we love and the passion we both
Mhm.
have for photography. So I love it. I love every aspect of the story. I like hearing all the connections that you have, the connections even that you put in through rugby. I think that's a great way, because for me it was skateboarding. Skateboarding was my creative
Okay.
outlet for 25 years of my life. And then when I got hurt for the last time, I couldn't do it anymore. And then I had my first kid and I had my first mortgage and okay, well, my whole life got replaced by these need to do things for my family, that when I picked
Mhm.
up the camera and started chasing long exposure water, that click of the shutter gave me that same feeling I was feeling in my past life as a skateboarder,
Mhm.
that connection to what I'm doing. So I started chasing water. I started chasing rivers and waterfalls and everything. And it's just been kind of an obsession for six years now. And, if I'm having a bad day, I know I can take a photo of a garbage can and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to be like, yeah, that was the photo I needed today. And it's neat, that connection between the creativity and positive mindset. Do you struggle with any of that? Like, I know imposter syndrome's one of the worst things ever, but do you look at your creativity as being a way for you to express a positive mental health aspect of your life?
Creativity, not as much, because again, just to circle back, what brought me into this was the outdoors, and that is the thing that will balance me and center me. Met up with a friend this morning, and we just went for a quick hike around through some forests nearby before lunch. And as I was explaining for my again, I've just had a very busy, stressful week. Um, and my friend was like, Andy, do you want to go for a hike tomorrow? He's a really good friend. I've known him for a long time. Um, and I didn't have the time really to hike. I was like, oh, goodness, I've got so much to do. But I could feel myself getting more and more anxious. Like just when you're in this state of kind of manic activity because you've got so much to do. And I was getting anxious, and I was like, and there's a part of thinking, you can't do this. You've got to stay home. You've got to get cracking on with these emails and get this thing that we're working on put in place. Because one of the things about workshops is that the largest part of my job is dealing with logistics and admin of creating these tools. It's a there are a lot of moving parts. Um, so like there's a part of me going, you need to focus on work, and there's another part of going, no, I need this. I need to get out. So I go out, for a walk this morning, and I just feel everything just falls away, and that for me is has been my outlet is being in nature. Now the camera is a part of that, but it doesn't always have to be. But the camera will push me more to go out and spend time in nature. And when you're in places and you've just got this insane sunrise or water again, it's interesting hearing you talk about water, because I think being near moving water, there's an energy from the movement of that water. It gives you something. Being near the ocean, being near a river, being near a waterfall, there's an energy there which is almost impossible to be near that energy and remain anxious if you're connected to it. And the photography will, for me, connect me to it. It is so you can sit on the beach just turning over your all the stuff that you're anxious about. But then when you get the camera and you connect with it, and then suddenly that energy that's coming off the water, off the ocean, or waterfall is and it's you just gonna kill. For me, it will just absolutely balance center me. Um, so it's not so much the creative aspect for me. It's that connecting with that energy that I think comes from nature.
Amazing. I've never looked at it that way. And now it's something when I'm out, I can actually mentally take that in and see, it's always, to me, was the click of the shutter. That was my
Hmm.
connection to feeling that same feeling that I used to feel when I hopped on a skateboard just and rolled down the street. There's
Hmm.
that same feeling involved. So I love that explanation. And I think a lot of people will take from that in a very positive way. Um, so you shoot Fuji. We won't hold that against you. Um, just kidding. I love Fuji still. How did that partnership come about?
Um, I my first proper camera was Nikon. I
Whatever they
get
call it.
whenever with whatever way I say it, there's always someone on the internet who'll tell me that I'm saying it wrong. Um, and I eventually moved up to a D800E. which is an astonishing camera. But this is before I was working professionally. Photography was still a hobby. And I was kind of falling a little bit out of love with it because I think it was probably a combination of where my life was at the time. I wasn't really, it was, I was still working as a teacher and I wasn't really happy with a lot of, with what I was doing professionally. Like days would just drift by, weeks would drift by. And I was finding myself less and less inclined to pick up the camera. I would still go out, but I was less inclined to pick up the camera. Um, and then um, I would do kind of like 1 day workshops around Lisbon or out the coast here. Just people would be coming to Portugal and they'd see my work and say, "Oh, can we spend a day doing this?" And someone came along with an XT1 and an X100. I think it was probably the original X100. And I, with my D800E, was very sneery about it. It's not a real camera. It's not a proper case. I knew literally nothing about them. But I kind of, watching this person use the camera, and I played around with it, and it just felt really nice. I really liked this. I really like using it. So I went out and I bought one with the intention of it being like a second camera to the D800. That would be the serious camera that I would use for the proper thing. And I was just about to go on a trip with my wife. We were going to Indonesia, which was kind of a trip that we'd been planning for a year, and we're really looking forward to it. And I was going to take my Nikon. Um, and I never do this. This is something that I've never done before. But I was looking at the Fuji website, and it was all street photography or reportage stuff like this. Editorial photography. There were no landscapes. No one was shooting landscapes with Fuji, which kind of made sense. It was a 16 megapixel APS-C. Everyone was using much higher resolution Sonys or Canons or Nikons. So I sent them an email, and it was just like along the lines of, "I'm going to be in Indonesia. I'm going to take an a Fuji cam with me. Would you be interested in having any of my images for the website so you can have some landscapes?" Um, and then they got back in touch with me, Fuji Portugal, and said, "Would you consider a partnership? We'll give you some lenses to go and do some stuff with, and we'll look at doing a partnership." So then I realized, if I was going to go to Indonesia, I couldn't. I had to shoot only with a Fuji. I planned to shoot with the Nikon, and I thought, I've got to do this with the Fuji. So I left the Nikon at home. And I just really, just shot with two Fuji cameras, and just really enjoyed photography. Just fell in love with it over again. Loved using these little cameras. I was doing, street environmental portraits of people that I met there. I was doing landscapes, and I just really, really fell in love with it. And then the connection with Fuji built from there. Fuji Portugal are this relatively small group of people. They're very kind of it's like a small family, and then you get to know them, and I just would fall in love with photography again, got to know the people. They were like super supportive. So it's, if you want to borrow this lens, you can go away and do stuff with this lens. And they've never asked me for anything in return. It's a very easygoing relationship. And I promote their stuff and promote their gear through my own work. I don't really feel that I actively portray it. And when any review that I make of their stuff, I always try to be honest. But I am a Fuji shooter. I like their stuff. But I on workshops, I see every kind of camera. We have people shooting everything from Leica and Hasselblad through Sony, Canon, and Nikon, just everything. And everyone makes great cameras. They're all great. They're all great. And really, it doesn't really matter. I like using the system that I'm using. It gives me what I need. I'm sure anyone can make a great argument for any other brand, and that's all fine. Then it's great that we have this choice, that we live in a world with so many amazing ways to take pictures.
Yep. Every camera nowadays is good. It's just what resonates with you. And as we were talking at the beginning, what connects to your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I was the diehard Fuji shooter. I've started with when the X-T3 got launched. I grabbed
Hmm.
that. That was my first real camera after the 3000. But I've run the gamut with Fuji. I've had from the X-T1 to the X-T5, the XH1, XH2, GFX 50, GFX 100. so
Wow. Okay, that
so
is
I
pretty much everything.
so I've had I still love them. And I love the way they capture. And it's just the biggest thing is just get out and shoot what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they gave me back my love for photography. They really did, and that for me is a big thing. The other, it was a tour last year, and I can't remember which one it was, but someone came along on a tour with a Nikon D850. I haven't seen one of those for a long time, and they are, in terms of uh, interface and so many of the aspects of it, very dated. The autofocus, the LCD screen, everything is dated. But my God, the images that those cameras put out they still stand up. They are outstanding photographic machines. And I was using my D800. It was 10 years ago now when I switched to Fuji. It was 2015. So I was using my D800 on some of like the trips that I made before that. And I look at the images now and they still stand up. Um, So we're just lucky, I think, to have this amount of quality and this amount of choice for what are ridiculous prices. Because just if you've been doing this for a long while, I remember when I started, when I had my first Nikon, and the camera that every landscape photographer wanted was a Canon 1DS Mark II, Mark II or Mark One. And it was a full frame camera. It had 16 megapixels full frame. 16 megapixels full frame. We're all playing around with like 9 megapixels and APS-C. 16 megapixels. Wow, it's like 7 megapixels more. And that was $9,500 US, I think, for that camera. And it was out of reach to everyone except someone. The only person buying a camera like that is someone making, a living from photography. And now you've got, you can get a GFX for what, 5,000, 6,000. It is astonishing the access that we have to image making. It really is astonishing.
Yeah. And I know I don't talk gear much here, but when you're going on say a trip, I think the workshops they're very fascinating to me. How do you choose what to bring? And what is your favorite setup for these trips?
There isn't a one setup, and it will basically go along the lines of, am I going to be carrying my gear on my back a lot? And if it is, then it will probably be the XT5 in the smaller system. But then you factor in, am I also taking a drone? I'm going to be carrying a drone and extra drone batteries, because then you've got like the GFX takes up a lot of space. So taking a big drone and the drone batteries and the controller, and then you take the GFX with like three lenses, it starts to get big and heavy. So there's all these factors, and it usually comes down to how much time am I going to be spending carrying this gear? How much gear am I taking? So for anything that I do that's trekking, it will usually be the smaller system. If it's somewhere that where that's not an issue, then I'll take the GFX. But then there's other things like the GFX produces astonishing image quality, but it's a limited system. You don't have anything like the lens range. So this year I've been doing more wildlife. I've been kind of shooting a lot more wildlife than I used to in the past. And places like Namibia, you're often shooting the lens that you use most often there is a super telephoto. I use 100 to 400 a lot there. And that's where the GFX starts to fall down, because you don't have that kind of range of lenses. Every camera system's got a really nice 100 to 400 or a 200 to 600. And I don't have that on the GFX. If I know I'm going to be leaning heavily into that, then again, I'll go with the XT5, because I've got, a much wider range of lenses there. But yeah, but I wouldn't sell either system. I will always have the GFX and the XT5. They both work well. It's not a case of one is going to replace the other. I like them both, and they both have advantages. They both have drawbacks. Like anything.
Yeah, there's no perfect setup. it must be interesting to how often do you go to one of these things and be like, man, I wish I brought this. That would be my biggest fear because I
It's
would stress on it.
it's rare, but that touches on an interesting point, that I when I started doing this, when I wasn't doing this professionally, I would get away for one trip a year to do photography, and was very fortunate in having a wife who was perfectly happy to let me go to these places like where I really wanted to photograph, like Iceland or Myanmar or wherever. Um, and I would get very stressed because you 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 go to a place and you've got these ideas of the photos that you're going to take there, and it develops a level of expectation, which creates a level of pressure, which is this can feed into a fear of failing. I'm not going to get the shot. It's not going to. And that I used to struggle with that. I used to get a little bit anxious before I went out shooting, and then you start shooting, and all that goes away. But I would have that anxiety, and I would be if I missed something. If something like there was a great sunset, or I didn't have a particular lens, I'd beat myself up about it. And did I do that? I'm very fortunate now that I do this for a living. So I'm out shooting, generally traveling 4 to 5 months a year. So I do have a much more like if I miss it, there's always more photos. And I think one of the blessings of being able to do this a lot is learning to accept that in your life as a photographer, you will miss more shots than you'll ever take. You will miss things. For every shot that you take, you're going to miss everything happening over. There's the thing that you missed there. The thing that you shoot in wide angle, you missed the best light with a telephoto shot. And it's that acceptance of it doesn't really matter if you miss something because there's always going to be more. As long as this is a road. Photography is a road, is a journey that I will stay on for as long as I can until I'm incapable of leaving the house. So there's always going to be another shot. So getting hung up on the stuff that you missed because you didn't have the right lens or whatever, is something that I have left that. I've been fortunate enough to be able to leave that behind. And I think, even if you don't travel, you're not lucky enough to be able to travel a lot and you don't get as many opportunities. It's an attitude to cultivate because even if you get a good shot from a session, there's probably still something that you missed. And this is the thing that you see on workshops a lot. We'll be out and you'll be out with a group of people shooting, and then someone will come back and show you the back of the screen. You're like, oh, that's amazing! I didn't see that. Oh, and there's a part of you who's like really, really impressed, but then there's a little part of you thinking, gee, I didn't see that. I should have seen that. And I think, you always miss stuff. And that's the thing of when you get to shoot with other people, you see people seeing stuff that you don't see. And it really hammers that home that you can't see everything. You will miss stuff. You'll miss shots. You will, make a mistake at some point and think something will go wrong or whatever. And it's just, there's always tomorrow or next week or next year. So there's always more, it's always the photo that you haven't taken yet rather than the one that you've missed that is the one to think about.
With your workshops, like what is the size range? Like how many people would go or how many people do you allow on the workshop so you have that one-on-one time with each person?
We usually take about 10, and I work with either two or sometimes three partners. So it's like 1-to-5 ratio or 1-to-3 ratio. Um, and you try to get a lot of time with people in the field. Um, you're typically starting a photography workshop. You'll be getting up before sunrise. You're kind of on the go for sort of 15, 16 hours a day. And in that time, you spend a lot of time with everyone. Even whether it's sitting and talking at meals, you get to kind of understand where people are coming from and what they need. Because what you find on workshops is there are people who come along and they come along for, sometimes they come along for the camaraderie. They sometimes, they're extremely good photographers and they don't need your support, or they come along because they know that we're doing all of the the legwork in terms of logistics, arranging for the permits, for the parks, for the helicopter flights, getting the the trucks to take us to the location, getting the hotels booked. So they can just go there and just shoot. You get people like that who don't need anything. And then the other end of the spectrum, people who, they really want to learn, they don't have a huge amount of confidence, or they're just starting on their journey, and they're quite nervous that they're not going to get a shot. So you kind of quickly pick up who are the people who you're going to be spending more one-to-one time with. Because some people are super, super comfortable on their own. Some people, really, really want, just your support and to know that you're there and helping them, that they're not gonna miss shots. But what we find is that whenever you go on any photography trip, whenever you get your camera out of your bag, it's because you have the intention of making an image. You wouldn't get your camera out of your bag otherwise, and you'll do that constantly throughout a trip. But whenever you get out your camera out your bag, you don't take an image. Not every session results in what we call a portfolio image. And a portfolio image, I think, is an image that 2 years down the line, when the emotions of the trip have passed, you're still really proud of that. You'll keep it on your website, you'll print it and put it on your wall. That's what we define as a portfolio image. And typically, on a trip, if I get 5 or 6 of those, I think that's a good return. Now that's quite hard, I think, sometimes for people to accept. I'm only needing in 5 or 6 shots, but I think it's the reality. What you will take shots that you are happy with in the moment, but then the following day you'll take something better, and then you'll have a day when things don't work, and then you'll sit and you'll look at your work, and if you evaluate it honestly, the stuff that you're really, really happy with, will be maybe 15 shots. But give that 6 months, give that a year, give it 2 years, when you go off and you do more photography, and you do more shots, and then you revisit those images. And if you find that there's 6 images that you're really happy with, that you're still really happy with 2 years down the line, then I think that's a successful thing. So what we find on workshops is that generally, I've been doing this quite a while now, so we know that we can help people get shots that they're happy with. What you want is to give people the skills so that they can then reproduce that on their own. You want people to take that away. So this is where, my obsession with composition, which is what, what fascinates me, is like things like rule of thirds and leading lines and stuff like that. But yes, but why? And I think these are the questions that the more I get in, the further I get along the road of photography, it's that, yes, but why? And you start to get into elements of understanding, trying to understand the weight of things in an image, the weight of things in a frame, the balance of elements within a frame, the way certain shapes are appealing. You live in, I know it's not particularly mountainous in your part of the world, but what makes a particular mountain photogenic and another mountain less so? If you give a kid a crayon and a piece of paper and ask him to draw a mountain, he's going to draw a kind of pyramid shape, even if he's never seen a mountain, because it's like we have this psychological idea of what an ideal mountain looks like, and it's pointy. It's a pointy mountain. So we have like an attraction to certain shapes and forms. And again, I have lots of conversations with people that I work with, and you can dive into the psychology of how hard your brain has to work to make sense of something. So if you have a very clean, minimalist image, your brain doesn't have to work so hard to process it. So it is quite pleasing. But if you have visual chaos and noise, it is a lot more work. There's a lot more going on, and your brain is kind of much working hard. So, I mean, I don't have answers to this. These are just kind of things that I'm throwing out. But it does fascinate me that there are shapes and elements that attract us visually. A lone tree on a hill. Why is that so attractive? Why is that more attractive than four trees on a hill? What? So these are the things that fascinate me. So what I find is that you're trying to understand that language of shape, of composition, and you get into things like depth and three dimensionality and harmony and balance. So these are the things that interest me because I think understanding that, if you give someone a good composition, you say, look, this works because the mountain's there and the light's really nice, they can make a good shot, but you have to understand why it's a good shot. You have to understand what are the elements in it. And it's not enough to say, well, it has a nice foreground or it has a leading line, and those are steps along the way. But beyond that, because sometimes you don't want a foreground. Sometimes foregrounds are will diminish the composition. So it's that understanding of why you're going to use a telephoto lens or why you're going to use a wide angle lens, and because what are you adding, what are you giving, and what is it that's working in a scene. Those are the things that fascinate me. So when people come along on workshops, these are you can sometimes see people just kind of like, you could record this and this will send me to sleep if I struggle with insomnia, because those are the things that interest me. It's like if you can go away with an understanding, not just getting a good image, but an understanding of what makes it and what are the elements that go into creating that, why that works, then it will help you along your photography journey. Those are the things that are, that I still find I'm learning. I used to be an English teacher. Um, we speak English as a native language. So we've never really had to deconstruct the language that we speak as our mother tongue to understand why we do things. What's the difference between I had breakfast and I've had breakfast? I'm not going to dive into into these things because people are not listening. Listening is for granted. But when you teach English, you have to understand the differences between those kind of things. And when you would use "I had breakfast" and when you use "I've had breakfast" and these kind of things, um, and then you start to learn about things like meta language, which is the language that we use to describe things. And I think that's the thing that I'm learning with photography. It's learning to understand and then communicate something which is essentially visual. Photography is a visual skill. You're attempting to capture your feelings visually. So then trying to use words to explain that almost defeats the object because it's a visual medium. It's like trying to explain to someone why a melody works in a song. Well, this melody, it's very hard to do it. The melody works because it resonates with you. So understanding, if you dive into, well, why does that chord progression work and this one not work? And it is very easy to lose people in the nerdiness of this, but these are the things that I find very, the very thought provoking is how you can communicate that this works because I'm gonna stop now because I really I really will. So you'll be like losing listeners in droves.
Do you have any workshops coming up for the rest of the year?
Yeah, next week I'm off to Madeira and then the Azores, which is it's the first time I've done workshops in Portugal for a long time because Madeira and Azores are islands in the Atlantic, but they belong to Portugal. So it's the first time I've done a paid workshop in my own country for a very long time. And then I'm heading in November to Utah, to the Southwest, for two workshops down there, which is an amazing, amazing part of the world. And then, yeah, Japan, we're putting together tours for Namibia now we have to do everything so far. You're typically planning stuff 18 months, 2 years in advance because you've got to get block bookings and hotels and things like this. Um, and Yeah, so my head is kind of usually 2 years in the future. Do you need me to close the door because of the dog barking outside? I don't know if you can hear that.
I can hear it. It's a real moment. I don't try to cut any of it out. I love the authentic conversation. I have all
Yeah.
my kids run through the door of the office and yell at me for something, and I turn and look at them, and they see the screen, they see the microphone, they see the headphones, and then it clicks, and they're like, but it's just part of the show. So
Yeah, and the heat of the day's worn off now here in Portugal. So my wife's just got out into the garden and she's clearing stuff, and she's left the doors open so you can hear like the ambient noises from
yeah,
the garden going in.
no problem whatsoever. Do you still have spots open on these tours, and where can people connect with you if they're interested?
This year, nope, they're sold out. But as I say, we're just launching a Namibia workshop for next year, which is just going out now. So that will have places on it. And there will be workshops in Madeira next year. And yeah, I've just agreed to do something in Nepal, to do like a trek to Everest Base Camp in November, which we're going to sell as a workshop. So my friend who I work with, he's a hiking guide, he's saying, let's do this. And I've decided if I don't do it now, I probably never will. So those will all be going up on the website, and you can find them on the website, andymumford.com.
Perfect. Is the website the best place to connect with you, or is Instagram
Absolutely,
an
yeah.
option?
Website. I'm less and less on Instagram. I probably open it once a week nowadays. It's not a platform. I think, it was once upon a time there's a lot of stuff there that would inspire me, but it's, their business model has changed, and I find myself not really engaging with it, and just opening it less and less.
Perfect. Any final words of wisdom?
I think the thing that I think is important is to always remember why you started this. We all picked up a camera for the same reason, because we saw something that was cool and we wanted to take a photograph of it. And that should always be why you do this. Whatever the gear is and lenses, and whether something is sharper than the other or whatever's happening, that is the thing that I think you should always go back to, is that why do you do this? Because there are beautiful things that you want to, that make you feel something, and that you want to try to capture that. And that should always be at the core of everything, I think.
Perfect. Well, Andy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been fantastic. I look forward to continuing to watch you grow and watching your amazing landscape work be put out in the world. So again, thank you so much for letting us have this conversation today and coming on the show. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to gain a lot of perspective from your answers and your story.
No, thank you for having me, Tyson. I always enjoy talking about this stuff, because I think it's such a beautiful thing, to do. And then I think photography, as I was saying, you meet so many like-minded people, and it's at the end of the workshops, the photos are important, but it's always the stories and the experiences. Those are the things that you remember, the things that you share. And I'm very happy to meet you and to talk about that and to share that.
Thank you for listening to the P.H.Y.S Podcast. If this conversation inspired you, taught you something, or made you see the world a little differently, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Follow us on all social medias at P.H.Y.S_podcast to stay connected with future episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and the growing creative community around the show. And remember, as always, photography heals your soul. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.